Jerry Lorenzo and Fear of God have moved from Nike to Adidas. You want to know why? Well, there's the PR version and then there's the real version. Let's get into it. But before we get going, I've looked into it and a very tiny percentage of you are actually subscribed to the channel. So it doesn't cost you anything. If you like the content I make, just click that subscribe button and I thank you profusely. So Fear of God is now an Adidas collaborator, and the founder of the brand, Jerry Lorenzo, is making big moves himself by heading up Adidas's basketball division. In the public press releases and branded Instagram posts, this has been chalked up to a calling from God. You know, there's the whole idea of like the Holy Trinity, and there's already Fear of God Mainline and Fear of God Essentials, and now with Adidas, there is going to be Fear of God Athletics. So 3 Fear of God brands under one roof, fulfilling that Holy Trinity, so on and so forth. I find it to be kind of a stonery idea. Like, I don't think it's all that different from these brands who use like triangle Illuminati symbolism, you know? So that's nice and all, and I'm sure Jerry is very sincere in his beliefs, and I'm really glad all this symbolic stuff worked out for them in this way. But at its core, I really think that this is all a lot of fluff around a gooey center of cold, hard business sense. So why did it make sense for Lorenzo to take his talents and his brand away from Nike and bring them over to Adidas? I mean, from the outside, it looked like the Nike situation had been going great. The Air Fear of God continues to be one of the most coveted sneakers in recent years, on par with the Off-Whites and Cactus Jacks. But if you look deeper, you can see some clear reasons why Lorenzo may not have been feeling the love over this swoosh anymore. Here are the biggest reasons I see for why he jumped ship. First, you've got to think about creative freedom. At Nike, collaborators get very limited control. All but the biggest designers are really only allowed to tweak existing silhouettes. Nike's really only willing to give you a Dunk or a Jordan, or God forbid they pawn you off on Converse and you get an All-Star. And even then, they only let you splash the shoe with a couple new colors and maybe like one interesting design element added. At Adidas, collaborators are given much more leeway, and they seem to have a bit more respect for the actual artistry of design elements. Kanye got his own line, of course, but even just look at other collaborators with Adidas like Raf Simons, Alexander Wang, Prada, Bape, OAMC, Stella McCartney, Pharrell, and Human Made. They're allowed to play with their own take on like a Stan Smith or Superstar if that's what they want to do, but they're also allowed to create entirely new silhouettes if they so wish. And then there are also the release restrictions. At Nike, there are clearly a couple distinct tiers that they put their collaborators in. If you're like a Virgil Abloh or Travis Scott, you're basically allowed to do a new Nike sneaker as often as you want. But if you're just about anyone else, you're limited to maybe a sneaker a year, if that. Think about the real capital F fashion companies who have had Nikes. Ambush, Comme des Garçons, Alix, Sacai, Supreme, even Dior. They've been a single sneaker, or a range of just a couple colorways, or a high-low combo if you're lucky. Adidas is essentially the opposite. The majority of their fashion collaborations are full lines. Of course, there's Yeezy, which is its own entire brand, but Simmons, OAMC, Wang, McCartney, Human Made, they've all done broad lines under Adidas. And there will usually be a range of color options, and the entire line will be a mix of new and archival silhouettes. So thinking of all that, some things start to kind of come into focus. When you step back, you start to see that Nike really wasn't giving Fear of God all the love and support that you would expect. The Air Fogs are huge, but they never really capitalized on it by expanding it into a line or releasing it more often or in more variants. The only other notable sneaker that Lorenzo released under Nike were the Fear of God moccasins, or mocks, which were actually a pretty clear failure. I didn't hate them, but it's clear that the community at the very least didn't love them because they resell way under retail, which is a really bad sign. Who knows why the mocks didn't work out? Maybe that's why Nike hasn't done more with Fear of God. Maybe Jerry Lorenzo blames Nike for their failure in some way, who knows? But it's easy to imagine that it led to tension between the two brands. All of that actually boiled over into the public eye a couple months back. Lorenzo posted a new colorway of the Air Fear of God 1 on Instagram and announced that it would be sold through Instagram and limited to only 100 pairs. People quickly realized that with odds like that, they'd be very, very unlikely to snag a pair for themselves before they sold out. So they started commenting, saying, why would you limit these to only 100 pairs? That way it's all but guaranteed that they're going to go to bots and resellers. Jerry replied, quote, I'm not in control of how many pairs Nike wants to make. Please take that issue up elsewhere. Now that may not seem like much, but in the business world that is considered some serious shade, a PR faux pas if ever there was one. First, he's airing their private business, making it clear that he is not happy with the low amount of pairs that Nike decided to manufacture. Then he's going even further and urging his followers to direct their anger towards Nike. Now, who knows where in the timeline this falls? Maybe he already knew he was going to Adidas and this was like a final middle finger to the swoosh. Or maybe this was the insult that caused him to go to Adidas in the first place. Either way, it's clear that there was no love for Nike at Fear of God anymore. If all of this sounds a bit familiar, well, it should. Because all of this happened years back with another massively popular black artist, Kanye West. But it's not just a passing surface resemblance either. So here's why Ye left Nike. First, he lamented Nike's unwillingness to change, saying they were never down to try anything new. Yep, like I said, you get a Dunk or a Jordan or nothing. He also had issues with the business side in the royalties he was supposed to be paid for his shoes. And keep in mind, if you're making royalties on each shoe and they only manufacture 100 pairs, well, that's not a very big payout at all. Finally, Kanye said it was impossible to get anyone at Nike on the phone, whereas the CEO of Adidas would pick up his calls all the time. If you're like a creative who comes up with an idea every second, that's gotta be really annoying. Another similarity is that Kanye only ever got to make 2 Nike sneakers. You heard that right. The biggest artist of his generation only got to make 2 Nike collaborative sneakers. There was just the Air Yeezy 1 and 2. Again, it's like fucking deja vu going on here with this Fear of God situation. The rest of the Yeezy story is well-known history. Kanye went to Adidas where they gave him free reign with his own brand, of course called Yeezy. So clearly, Nike did not put Kanye West on that top tier of collaborators, much like they didn't with Fear of God either. And Nike is so massive and stuck in their ways that it's unlikely that they would ever be willing to change. So Lorenzo is going the Yeezy route and deciding to be that big fish in the small pond. If you consider one of the biggest sneaker brands a small pond, that is. In the end, I have a feeling that all of this is going to be set up a lot like the deal that Kirby Jean-Raymond set up for his brand Pierre Moss and Reebok. In that deal, he's got his own Reebok by Pierre Moss clothing line, and he's also now the creative director for Reebok itself. Similarly, with Fear of God Athletics, it's clear that we're going to get a full range of sneakers and apparel out of the deal with these 2 brands. And the one other thing we haven't talked about yet is the part of the deal where Lorenzo himself runs Adidas's basketball division. And this move really makes sense to me. While Adidas is big in basketball, they are a distant second to Nike. I mean, they have players like Dwight Howard and Derrick Rose, and a growing group of up-and-coming talent, but it's nothing next to the stable of stars that Nike have under contract. So a big name like Jerry Lorenzo coming on board might be just what the 3 Stripes need to steal away a few big names from Nike. Lorenzo is beloved for the Air Fear of God 1, and he counts a lot of NBA heavy hitters among his closest friends. And even if the friendships don't win big signings, the designs might. Personally, I think it kind of goes without saying that over time, Nike's basketball silhouettes have just been straight up cooler than the ones that Adidas has come up with. But with Lorenzo overseeing the brand's basketball sneakers and apparel, that might give these stars the faith that they need to believe that they'll end up with something fly on their feet. I mean, of course, in the end, it is sales that matter, so it definitely remains to be seen whether, the general fans will pick up on this and think that what he's making is cool and will buy into this hype train, but I understand the move. It's a risk, but it's probably one that is worth it based on where they are right now. So that is the breakdown of this massive move of Fear of God and Jerry Lorenzo going to Adidas. Let me know in the comments what you think of this change. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, watch the other video on screen here, and I'll see you next time.